Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Monday. I'm Mike. She's Wendy, and you're in the Marriage Shop. Welcome.
Yes, so it's good to be back. We've been gone for a couple of weeks, which feels like it's been a couple of months, and we have missed you. So, Kathy Barnes, thank you for joining us. Charlotte Bembry, I saw that you jumped in pretty early as well.
Yeah.
It's been a while. So,
Hey,
yeah,
Charlotte.
we've been on the road, and we've been taking some time out for us. So, we
Yeah.
appreciate your prayers, your support, and that you're checking in with us tonight. So, welcome back to the Marriage Shop. And
Yeah.
Joseph Wright, welcome.
Pat Wright, that is.
Oh,
Yeah, that's Pat Wright. So, what's up? Hey, bro, welcome. Welcome to the Marriage Shop. Good to see you. And so, as you all come in, I just want to, tonight we're going to be talking about something I think that really, this is actually specific to a certain pocket of us, and you know where you are. And if you're not in the pocket yet, you're going to be going into that pocket. And if you're there, you know you're there. And so make sure you share this with anybody. We're on YouTube and we're on Facebook. So share it, like it, all that. This is Wendy's part. Do say that stuff, Wendy. You know the thing you say.
I mean, you felt like you just went, yeah.
I mean, I started talking and found myself, I was in it. You know what I mean? I was in it.
I see. So, we have a hard time remembering what we talked about the week before. So we certainly don't remember what we talked about a few weeks ago. You remember what we talked about?
Nah, you know better than to ask me that question.
Well, one thing that I usually share with you is how hot it is in Evans. So I usually say the weather is blah, blah, blah. And it's absolutely beautiful, but it's hot. It's like so hot that we probably need to turn on the AC.
I think you are. Why are you playing? She already turned on the AC, y'all. She did.
No, I'm serious.
Oh, you mean like right now in here?
Yes.
Oh, well, hey, somebody grab that
Excuse
remote
me?
control. We're gonna do that. Let's get maintenance right on it. And so while Wendy is cooling it down, and see, part of the issue here is this: we just came back, as some of you all know, we were in Alaska for 10 days, something like that. And so, I think we found ourselves to be nice and we got hardened in Alaska. We're ready for that tundra life after 10 days. So we got Alaska light. Highs in the 40s, lows in the high 20s. It wasn't negative, but it was Alaska though. So anyway, we were there. It was amazing. If it's not on your bucket list, you need to get it there.
Yeah,
it was pretty phenomenal.
We should have shared some pictures, but we didn't think about it. So maybe next time. But yeah, it's one of those things. I would say, a lot of people say it's on their bucket list, right? An Alaskan cruise or going to Alaska is one of those things where you had talked about going on a cruise for years, and I was like, I don't like to be cold. So if you're somebody that's thinking I don't like to be cold, you need to get over that, because let me tell you, it wasn't extremely cold. It was not brutally cold. It was great. And if you have a coat and some boots and some gloves and a hat, you're fine. It doesn't matter what time of the year it is.
Listen, she's talking like an old Alaska pro. We went in early April.
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah.
Early April. It's the breakup is happening in early April. And this is the Marriage Shop. We're not talking about the relationship breakup. We're talking about the ice breakup. So ice is beginning to melt, across the state, and things are trickling and all that stuff. And there's Did you know they don't use salt in Alaska on the roads? All you cold weather people, did you know that? They use gravel. There's gravel everywhere, just mounds of it.
Yeah.
But that's another story. Anyway.
That's good stuff. So Jeff is headed there soon. Jeff and Deb. Pat says it's on the bucket list.
Yes,
yeah. And so, we hear a lot of people talk about that. What?
Yeah, no doubt. I was gonna say Nicoletta's in the house. I don't know.
Roll Tide.
I don't know if she ever plans to go to Alaska, but I mean, I guess they're gonna roll Tide. If they go, they're gonna roll Tide on into Alaska. Anyway.
Yeah. It was something. It was breathtaking. But the most important part about that trip was, yes, we went to serve other couples, and some of you may be on tonight. And we met some amazing people when we were in Anchorage.
Yeah.
We went to serve, but we also went to take a little bit of time for ourselves. And so that's one thing that we try to encourage, even with you. We try to, I won't say we try to live by example, but in some ways we have to show that we are prioritizing each other.
Yes.
And I think that's true in our workplace. That's true within our family.
Yeah.
And it's important for both of us to know that we are number one on each other's list.
Absolutely. And what we did in this particular case, our anniversary hit before our speaking engagement obligation hit.
Yeah.
And so we decided to actually push the celebration to after. Now, I wanted to just push through because it was important, that this is the date, let's do it on the date. Wendy wanted to put it on the other side of our obligation, which ended up being a really great idea, because in trying to make it happen on the date, what I would have done is basically have some situation where we're stressed out about what's coming up instead of clearing the plate and just enjoying it. So I think the message there is to just, do things. Sometimes you have to, and I think it fits a little bit what we're talking about tonight. You got to flex your life a little bit to make it work. Because sometimes if you try to force fit something where you think it belongs, you'll end up, I think creating a few more problems, or at least creating an experience that won't be as enjoyable. So
yeah, you're right about that. Like going to Disney in July. I mean,
let me tell you something, people. Figure it out. Do what you got to do. But Disney in July, no amusement there. I mean, I'm just saying
it's not fun for anybody.
Yeah, so we changed the game on that too.
Yeah. So you kind of teased it a little bit, but what are we talking about tonight?
Well, I think tonight's topic, and if my dad is on, look, Dad, I'm not necessarily talking about you, but I'm talking about you. All right. But I think this trip actually it creates a great time to talk about this particular topic, because I just returned on yesterday from a trip with my dad. We do this every year. We go fishing somewhere. Typically we try to go to, we're bass fishermen, right? We try to go to some place where there are, it's known to be a great bass fishing place.
Yeah.
A lot of times that's Florida, sometimes Alabama. This time we went to Virginia for a few different reasons. But we've been doing this, I don't know, maybe like almost since we've been married, certainly. I skipped a few years in there, but I've been doing this since I left home. I come back for a while, and my dad and I take a week and we go fishing.
Yeah.
The funny thing is that it's evolved, right? We used to camp, and one day I wake up and the dude was out and it's chilly and the bathroom is like way over there, and I'm like, and you can when you camp, you got to unpack and prep all this stuff and set up, and you got fire and you got all this stuff. And I told my dad, like, look, I mean, I don't mind camping as long as we camp inside with like some cable television and running water and all that. And so we switched it up a little bit because it was time to switch it up. Things were changing. And so now I look up and I'm 50 years old. My dad's 76. We've been doing this for, decades easily now. And I look at how things are changing and how we do what we do. We used to get up, crack of dawn, go hard all day, from chilly in the morning, super Florida hot, boom, sunset. And, we go and we clean and fish and we're cooking fish and go to bed midnight, get up next morning at, 5 o'clock and do it all again. One day I wake up and I'm like, hey, Dad, I'm sore. Are you sore? I know you're sore. I'm watching you, right? Don't be a hero. And we're just kind of, we're kind of pressing hard. So we're like, maybe we should switch it up and go early, skip that midday super heat when the fish aren't really biting strong anyway, then go back in the evening. So we changed it up then. And then, so we're just, the bottom line is things are evolving as we all get older. Right. And so I told Wendy, and I think I may have told even my dad this. I mean, at this point in my life, I feel like, part of my job is to take care of my parents. Right. Part of my job is to just pay attention. And just because we've done it a certain way or they've done it a certain way, I think part of my job is to pay attention and to do things that are going to put my parents in the best position possible. Right. It's going to take care of them, look out for their needs, maybe even when they're not looking out for their own. My dad, I'm not even gonna look on here. I don't know if he's here, but my dad can be a little bit, he just is like, no, this is the way I do it. And I'm like, no, we're not doing it that way, Dad. Here's why. And so, so there's that happening. At the same time, we have these kids, right? I call them kids. They're adults, right? Our daughters are 19 and 22. So they are legally and in many ways really transitioning into this adulthood. And so raising kids, like the word says, raise a child in the way that he should go, and when that child is old, it will not depart from it, right? And so we've done all this raising in the way that they should go. And so now it's like they're getting into the when they're older part. I don't believe that the word is raise them until they get it right. It's raise them in the way they should go, right? The way they should go, point them. And at some point we have to kind of release and allow that to happen. Wendy and many people call it parenting adults.
Yeah.
Because parenting adults is different. Like your adult children, it's way different than what you used to do, even though sometimes we will try to do that. So I got on two sides of things, right? You have your parents who are aging, you have your children who are getting older, and you have you sitting square in the middle, dealing with your own getting into that middle age. It's funny we call it middle age.
Middle age, right?
Not quite middle, but whatever.
Kind of in the middle.
You're getting into that place. Yeah. So what we're talking about tonight are the challenges associated with that.
Yeah, yeah.
Because it can be absolutely overwhelming. And some of you right now, I know, at this moment are absolutely overwhelmed with what's happening because you're dealing with all these things. Kids who are, and children, by the way, your youth are in this constant state of transition. It seems like it's never over, right? So they hit 12, 13 years old and the switch flips and you're like, who is this human being? Like, what happened to you? What did you do with my child? And get out. No, come back, right? So you have that happening, but that there's all these phases that continue to happen as they get older.
Yeah.
Right. And you're riding along somewhere on the outskirts as each of those phases occurs, even as your parents go through their own phases. Right. And so how do you deal with that? If you know what I'm talking about, say, yeah, I know what you're talking about. Put that in the chat. I know what you're talking about, Mike. Give me some peace that that's not just me.
It's not just
I've been talking a lot, but that's the setup, right?
That's the setup. Yeah. So what are we talking about?
We're talking about being caught in the middle, so to speak. That's the title of our talk tonight, right? Of our session, if you will. Being caught in the middle between aging parents and adult children. There's a lot that goes on, a lot you got to do.
Yeah, I mean, and even if it's not being caught between aging parents and adult children, just being caught between aging parents and raising children, right? So some of you have younger children, school-age children, toddlers, maybe at any age along the continuum, but you are still responsible for actively raising and parenting your children, while now maybe assuming responsibilities or recognizing that your parents require a little bit more from you. So Pat says, I know what you're talking about. Priest Perry, thanks for joining us. He says, man, I know what you're talking about.
Yes, sir.
It's almost like we wake up and we're here. Right?
No, that's true. It's like one day everything's just going along. It feels normal, whatever that looks like, and then boom, something changes. It's like, wow, when did that happen?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, and the truth is, it's happening all along. So what you're describing is what many of you may have heard of or coined yourself as the sandwich generation. So if you're not familiar with that, of course, we encourage you to Google it, look it up a little bit. But the bottom line is to know that you're not alone in this. And so the way that it's defined is the sandwich generation is a generation of people typically in their 30s or 40s, responsible for bringing up their own children and for the care of their aging parents. And so this would suggest that everybody's in your home. Like you might have multiple generations in the same household. And I think even if you don't have multiple generations in the same household, you still find yourself managing several people in different places. Maybe they're not in your home, but they're in their respective homes. It's not just about how many people you have under your roof.
It's very interesting if you think about it, because there are a lot of parallels, right? What are the things you manage? I don't know, where to live, finances, bills, right? Understanding what to do with your money right now, understanding how to make it the next day. I mean, there's a lot of parallels that you're working on from two different ends of the spectrum.
Yep. And I mean, and where's the manual for that, right? Nothing really prepares us for that. And nobody mentioned that you're actually going through some changes on your own, right? So there's rearing your kids, raising your kids, caring for your parents, and then taking care of yourself, which often becomes less of a priority when you're in this middle space in the middle of the sandwich, the chaos that ensues.
Man, so that's very interesting, because you could find yourself. We actually met a woman yesterday.
Yeah, we sure did.
Who finds herself having been in that sandwich since early on and has remained there well into later years.
Yeah, yeah.
And so that is a real challenge, because what do you do? Because you know that this thing has to be taken care of. You know that somebody has to do it. And so oftentimes what we say is, hey, somebody has to do it. So I'm going to do whatever it takes for however long it takes.
Yeah. So Lysandra Lampkin, thanks for joining us. And Shelly Wilson, we're always glad when you drop in. You're just a blessing. And Shelly says, releasing some control over our kids, trying to get your parents to let go of a little control. Isn't that the truth? Right?
Isn't that the truth, Shelly? Look, exactly right. It's, because we right now we're kind of in a generation like we were in a place where I remember my mom would kick us outside and she would say literally, do not come back in this house unless the house is on fire or something like that. In retrospect, I think, well, not a good time to come back in the house, Mom. I'm just saying, not the best time to come back. But her whole point was, don't bother me. I'm gonna take a nap or something. Get out. Yeah. Now, then it evolved somehow into having everything constructed for them and taking them here and there and doing and hovering. Helicopter parent kind of came into the vernacular over several decades ago now. Yeah. But just having to hover and do everything. And then we want them to kind of go, release, do what you do. But it's hard to relinquish that control when you've had it for so long. So Shelly, I think it's right on point. Yep. Relinquishing control. And then trying to take the control from your parents who are holding it kind of like this, right? Very difficult. Like, hey, you can't actually release some control. You can trust somebody else. You can trust me. But that can be a very difficult thing to try to navigate.
Yeah. And in all circumstances, including this, when trust has to be earned, right? Yeah. And so I've seen commercials, I've seen movies where they joke about, in fact, a commercial recently where there's a couple, they're sitting there talking about life insurance or what's going to happen later. And they're like, I guess we have to trust Billy with this, right? And then the camera pans to Billy, and Billy is like, has caught himself in a chair and somehow can't get his way out. And so they look at each other and they're like, well, at least we have our daughter, let's call her Shelly. So they pan to Shelly, and it's even worse. And then they were like, maybe we should have another one. I mean, it really just kind of captures our hope and our desperation in some senses. But it is something that we can make light of. But in all seriousness, many of us are just kind of, the struggle is real. We're struggling through. So I love that your dad is on.
Hey, Dad.
and he said, adjusting to the new norm is a challenge to those of us who are now seniors. As we age, we tend to resist change. I saw it in my mom. Yeah. Yes, that's so good.
Yeah, I mean, can you blame anybody for? Think about yourself. Like, how much do you embrace change? Whatever age you are.
Yeah.
Right. The likelihood is that you're not like, change. I'm gonna do it different now. Right. There's probably a process. And once you've kind of achieved a certain level of wisdom, you just kind of have a lot of answers.
Yeah.
And you know how things work. There's a reason why people really get into routines and why they want to keep those routines and they do things in certain ways and why they don't want to transition to something new. Checkbook to online banking, for example, right? Or getting that car with all the bells and whistles instead of just kind of the basic thing.
Yeah. You're not calling any names. So I like that Nicolette says she's going to take notes because they have young kids and their parents are still pretty independent. And as we said, Nicolette, it happens pretty quickly. But what you are I say, yes, take notes, but you are still experiencing this to some degree. And what do I mean by that? Specifically, as our children age, that systematic process of letting them go, because you mentioned it a little bit, right? So maybe your kids are not 16 or 15 and learning to drive. Maybe they're 5 and they're just about to enter into school, those types of things, or potty training. Yeah. Maybe they are like 90% potty trained, but you're just afraid to put them in underwear, like real underwear. It's still a process of letting them go. I'm talking about myself. Oh my goodness. When Sydney was when Sydney was potty training, it was so hard for me to get her some like real panties. Let me tell you,
it was a whole thing. Y'all.
Daycare, the daycare provider, she was like, I think she's ready. And I'm like, yeah, it's such a huge step. And now Sydney's 22.
I was surprised that it was such a. I thought we were going to celebrate, like, yeah, we're getting some of our independence back, but no.
Yeah, it was a whole thing. It was a whole thing because it marked that she was maturing in her own way. But I had to relinquish some of the control that I had, right? I had to trust that she was able to do some things on her own. And that happens throughout our children's lives. So I'm talking to you as parents, but I'm talking to your parents as parents of you. If they happen to be on, it's just a continuous process.
Hey, share this with your parents, because I think this is an appropriate thing to share. And we don't come to you with all of the answers, right? Because I think collectively we somehow get there. So we don't come to you with all the answers. We just want to throw some things out there to consider. But I think what you bring up is an important point, because the practice of letting go has to start early.
Yeah.
Well, I say it has to. It didn't have to. You can try to let go late. It's just going to be much more difficult. And so because as our children grow, first there's this this period of life where they are just completely dependent, period, right? And then all of a sudden, we begin to do things. Maybe they hold their own bottle. Maybe they pick up their own food. Maybe they, and then they get the walk-in and all that. And so as soon as they begin to transition into growing into the people they're going to be, there's this process of letting go of the old thing, right? Letting go of that last thing, letting go of the thing right now that you're holding on real tight to, and pushing your child out of it. And that can be difficult because some of those things are really cool and people want to kind of remain close. Get your child out of the bed. We talked about it. We're not talking about it tonight. Get your kids out the bed, y'all. And so, but all those things represent a kind of a pushing away and setting independence and relinquishing control. If you don't practice that over and over and over again, I think those early years are for that. So you can practice that letting go. Because when it comes time, I can tell you now, and I try to practice letting go things, very difficult. Two things that were most difficult for me in the last several years. When Sydney started driving and we had to let her go and drive away the first time, and not follow her, and I was gonna tell her just far enough, but I had to let her go because I had to trust God to take care of her, right, in ways that I can't. And so that was profoundly difficult. And dropping her off at college and driving away, profoundly difficult. But necessary. Right. And so the letting go process has to be something that you practice over and over again in those early years. And by the way, as you age, if you made it a practice of letting go, maybe, just maybe, you can begin to relinquish control of things when it's time in that next phase, when you need to relinquish control. I'm talking to people like, let's say, like if you still play basketball and so you're over 40, I would encourage you to knock it off right now, because your Achilles blowout is coming.
That's funny. Don't wish that on anybody. DT Jack says you were not ready to get rid of the diaper bill. I mean, we absolutely were, but there was something else that was happening at the same time, right? It's just like people who have kids that we call them stair steps, that are back to back to back, and you always kind of have somebody in diapers or transitioning at the same time. It's just all part of the process. I wanted to be ready, but I have to be honest, at the time I wasn't ready, but I needed to recognize that just because I wasn't ready, I may have in fact been holding her back, which I think is a lesson in that, right? But one thing that you said earlier was it's whether they're ready or not. I mean, or whether or not you believe that they're mature enough or that they can handle it or whatever else. It doesn't say, would you say, the word doesn't say to hold on to them or teach raise a child in the way that they should go until they're ready for it. Is that what you said? Yeah,
basically.
Yeah. That's it.
Oh, I thought you were elaborate.
No, I'm just saying. So it's the whole idea of, yes, kind of doing that incrementally over time. So let's talk about the other end. So we're going to switch back and forth from kids to our parents, right? And so some of you may be saying, well, this doesn't apply to me. Maybe my parents are not in my life, or I'm not dealing with this, or my parents haven't aged yet. And so for me, many of you know, both of my parents passed away very early in my life. My mother died when I was 23, and then my father died just a few years later, or after that. And so relatively young in our lives, and our children were very young. So my mother passed away before I even met Mike, but my father met both of the girls. But Morgan was still relatively young, like an infant, younger than 2 at the time. And so some of those things in terms of caring for an aging parent, I didn't have to experience in that same way. And you may not have to experience it for your side of it, right? However, as is the case for me, what I'm experiencing is caring for my aging in-laws, right? And and when we say aging, we're not talking about people who aren't completely independent or who aren't on their own and who aren't able to make decisions. We're just talking about the fact that, hey, these old limbs ain't what they used to be. Or those types of things, right? Just some of the things and the way that we've always seen them, we actually are seeing them differently.
Yeah, and I think it's part of my role, I guess, is to say some things out loud, like identify something, ask some questions. My dad and I had a funny conversation about washing dishes this week. I'm like, why are we not using this dishwasher? My dad's like, man, I never use a dishwasher. I've never used one. I'm like, what? So, I mean, is that a big deal? No, but it is, is it a way to maybe recapture some time? Is it a different way of doing things? Right. And so it's just about highlighting and speaking, to some things. But I think it's also about recognizing when there are some challenges, because physical challenges come along. And so, it's funny because one year my dad had like a knee issue. I had a knee issue the next year. It's weird. Right. So, but, and so you have to make adjustments then, right? Because life as you know it must change at some point. And so how can you do that? The word tells us, and I'm going to Exodus for this one. Exodus 20:12 says, honor your father and your mother, that your days may be long in the land, and that the Lord God is giving you. And so how do you honor your parents, right, without disrespecting your parents, and giving them all of the respect and admiration and all that, and still be in a place where you can serve them, right, and help them when they need help, right, or give them what they need at a certain time, or highlight something. Hey, do you need this? Maybe you didn't think about it, but this may be something that might be helpful to you based on what I'm seeing.
Yeah. And I think one key in doing that is having the conversations early. So hold that point, like put a pin right there. I do want to get to Priest Perry posted this, and he said, facing the challenges of releasing control for older kids when you have a broad range of kids in the home and the younger kids see the older ones doing more and want to, that staggered release was very challenging for his wife and himself and their 6 children. And that's so true, right? True. Because there's this early conversation, right? And an honest conversation about what is for you at this point in your life, And so we find ourselves saying, when you get to be that age, you can. And when you turn 16, you can do this. And when and we do that. But when we end up giving in a little early sometimes, and who holds us accountable to that? The older ones. Yeah. They come back and they say, well, when I was 8, I was doing dishes. Yeah. Now she's 12 and she doesn't have to do dishes. Mm-hmm. It's hit or miss, right? You reserve the right to flex and to adapt and to adjust as needed for each individual, and each child is an individual. Everything is not for everyone.
Which is challenging though, because you get to this point as you get, go down the list of children, like, things do change. Yes. And I think the younger ones, they want their rights right now, right? And you're inclined to give them a few more rights, maybe a little bit more freedom, because now the older ones are in charge a lot of times. And so that's a big time challenge. Yeah. Please. That's why we stopped at 2.
But the key thing, and kind of where I said to put a point in it, was having the conversations, right? You and your wife, she and her husband, I'm talking to you and your spouse have to have conversations early when they're babies to start talking about those things, right? Mm-hmm. When I was having difficulty transitioning from diapers to panties, or from pull-ups to panties, I mean, you know, I had Mike supporting me and kind of encouraging me to kind of let it go. What's the worst that can happen, right? Mm-hmm. Well, we know what the worst is that can happen, but you know, what is the chance that it'll happen? And really just kind of supporting each other through that. That's why having a solid marriage relationship is key to helping you navigate being sandwiched between your parents and your kids. You need somebody that you can vent to, that you can trust, that you can lean on, and somebody's going to talk you off the ledge should it come to that.
Yep. Somebody's going to talk you off the ledge, not be like, yeah, go, let's go. I'm ride or die. Right. Listen, I think it's important to understand that a marriage, if you really support the marriage and feed the marriage, which can be a challenge. All these things are happening. You can't forget about each other, because a solid marriage can feed anything.
Yes.
Right. But you can't reach out and get caught up in something else and have that feed your marriage. Right. And so.
Wait, say that again.
A solid marriage can feed anything, can face any challenge, any problem. Right. If you all are solid. If you're not, there's no other singular thing out there that's going to feed your marriage. So you can't turn your focus, say the kids are driving you nuts. And now we spend all our time dealing with these kids, but we ignore each other and forget about each other, right? Even if you stabilize what's happening with the children, that is going to do nothing to stabilize your marriage. A stable marriage can be a stabilizing force for everything that you're going to face.
That's good. Yeah. That's good. So Camilla says, OMG, are we talking about teens? I say a special prayer for all parents of teenagers. Mm-hmm. Just saying. Mm-hmm. She says, my child just went to the prom Saturday and moved out against my will because my rules are not grandma rules. Woo! I have to let go. Help, y'all. Yeah. Help. This ain't nothing but God speaking to me. I've been crying 2 days hurt. Oh, yeah, wow. You know, our heart breaks for you. That's a challenging thing. And especially now, because our children are maturing so much faster, they've gained so much more independence and they have access to everything. Yeah. So they think they know. We will join you in prayer over that situation because, you know, we don't have all of the details, but we can tell you that God is faithful. Right. And just, and in every situation, he can come through and do things that you can't. So what does that mean? Even an extension of yourself. I think we put a lot of pressure on ourselves. We talked about existing in this chaos and having to balance all these things. And we talk about it from the lens of if it was all ours to do. And the truth is it's not all on us to do. Right. So you have a helpmeet in your wife. God has provided this gift to you in the partner that you've been given for life, right? That's one. But then we always try to get you to and encourage you to put God first in everything that you do, right? You're going to come up short. You're going to lose your temper. You're going to say the wrong thing. You're going to kick somebody out. You're going to do something drastic. You're going to hurt somebody's feelings. Yep. We're human. We're flawed. We're going to make those mistakes, which is why it's so essential to put God first.
If you haven't heard your kids say something back at you in anger that cut right through you because you're like, dang, right? I planted that seed. Hey, you're not living yet. So just wait. But I think it's important to understand this. Again, I'll take it back to the first thing I said. Yeah. Raise up a child in the way that they should go. And when they're older, they will not depart from it. Yeah. It doesn't mean they're not going to stray. Right. And so we have to trust God at his word, and we have to trust the seeds that you planted. Seeds are funny because you can't like force them to grow. You can't rush them to grow. You can like plant a seed in the ground and say, you grow seed. But that seed will not grow until the appropriate time, the appropriate heat, the appropriate water. And when it's time, it'll grow. The cool thing is that seed is growing even when you don't see it growing. Yeah. And so I think anyone who's raising children, you know, you've gone through these challenges, you're going through these challenges. And I think we're coming to the place now. We've been through a lot with our daughters, but there've been a couple of things I was sharing with Wendy just the other day. I say share with Wendy, you were sharing with me some things they said and done here recently that are proof positive that those seeds, they took root somewhere. And it took years for us to see like, wow, like she heard me.
Yeah.
And I can't talk about it much more.
Yeah.
But just trust God that the seeds you planted have fallen on good ground.
Yeah, you planted good seeds. And we're just talking about like when you were in kindergarten and you got to grow your own first plant and you like put a little seed in the dirt or in something small and then you saw the little arm come up. We don't have a leaf yet. Yeah. But that little bit of green that's coming up through there gives you hope, right? And that's kind of what we're seeing. You have to be able to kind of pause where you are and see the winds, right? See the little glimmer of hope that encourages you and validates for you that everything that you have put in may be enough to fortify them, sustain them, and at least it was the right guidance in the beginning, right? You may not get that till they're 40 or 50 years old, but start looking for it early because you just might miss it if you're so super focused on whether or not they're getting it all right. Yep. So we've been talking a lot about that.
I just want to share one thing. I want you to go back. Anybody who's where Camilla is, I want you to go back and read the parable of the prodigal son. That's Luke 15, beginning around verse 11. I want you to read that because that particular parable is, I think, exactly. It's a parallel to how we stray away from God, right? But we stray away from God all the time. Why we believe that our kids wouldn't stray away from us? So read that and just read it all the way through and be encouraged because it has a happy ending.
Yeah, that's good. That's good. So I love how you guys are supporting each other. So Nicolette is replying to Camilla and Camilla's coming back. So it's all good. Thanks for that, guys. So in terms of, I was talking about having that conversation and starting to talk about these things, having the conversation with your spouse, but also having the conversation with your parents and having the conversation with your kids, an age appropriate conversation that can start very early in their lives. When you could have a 5-year-old, if you have an aging parent that needs assistance, involve your kids in that process, right? Ask them to, I don't know, take Papa his juice or his drink, or when they're 16, ask them to drive grandma to her appointment. Involving everybody in the process takes some of the mystery out of it, right? It keeps us from being blindsided from, it seems like everything was going fine and we were all protected till all of a sudden things are drastically different and no one was prepared. We need to bring everybody along for the journey. Put everybody in the car. We all taking the trip.
Indeed. And so that's the thing, bringing people along because we think that our kids are somehow like the bad one, the worst one, the one that's messing up and everybody's kids are doing great. We think that our parents are the ones that are tripping when everybody else's parents are good to go. And I think you don't have to like have very many conversations before you find somebody who is in exactly that same place that you're in. And so there's all kind of support groups and all that thing, support groups for kids, support groups of people with aging parents, support groups of people for with disabilities or who are taking care of people, all kind of stuff. I would suggest to you that there are more people who are going through what you're going through and who are exactly where you are than you might expect.
Yeah,
and arms reach away.
Yeah, but we are so good at being guilty. Yeah, right. I mean, it's like I don't know where that comes from. I mean, maybe you know where that comes from, but it's so easy of all the emotions that we experience, guilt is one of the ones that we tend to kind of heap on ourselves and compound over time, right? If something doesn't go right, we find fault in ourselves. Something doesn't go right with our kids, we find a way to kind of make that trail back to us. I did it for years. Remember when I had like a whole breakdown because I was like, Morgan is dragging a leg. Man, let me tell you, I have been through it. I was like, oh no, it's my fault that I had to have a C-section and now something might have gone wrong and she's crawling and she's like low crawling like she's an army soldier. That was so hard for me. I mean, and first world problems, right? You may be saying, Wendy, you're a mess. And that's true. But I'm just being honest. Because that thing was real. Let me tell you, that was real. I was real upset about that. But my whole point
that was a crawling little kid with her little 1.5, that little 1.5 kick she had.
She was getting it.
So
but I'm like,
fine.
wait, something about this. But we find a way to bring it back to us. And even if we are not there for our parents, or our parents have a fall, or something happens, or somebody takes advantage of them, we somehow find a way to make it about us.
Yeah.
And so I would just encourage you, number one, to communicate, partner up, and fortify yourselves, because it's you against the world, right? And so the two of you partner to take care and parent, and you partner to care for your whether it's your in-laws or your parents. So I'm kind of doing that. It's the two of you together. You're sandwiched in the middle. The next thing though is to let go of some of that guilt, right? It's not just all on you. You have to let it go. No, I should have done this. I could have done this differently, or I would have done this differently. It is what it is.
Yeah, I think that part is really important, because there are so many traps. If you have a tendency to feel guilty about what you should have done, about what you're not doing, there's so many traps. And the guilt is what drives people to do more than they can possibly do.
Yeah.
Right. It drives them to do things that ultimately make things worse than better. The first thing is to trust God, and that He will change things, and that He will provide.
Yeah.
Whatever it is you need, whoever it is you need, right? But why people don't often, you kind of spoke to it, they don't often say anything, right? It's just like, I'm gonna be a martyr. I'm gonna stay over here. I'm gonna do it all. I'm gonna just suck it up, and I'm just gonna carry the load, when you can't carry it. So if you think you can, if you think you just go one more day and just stack on a little bit more, stop it now and stop trying to carry a load by yourself. Share that with somebody, because oftentimes we don't share because we don't really see how we can find a way out. We don't know what can be done.
Yeah.
And part of the reason we don't know what can be done, because we only carry part of the truth, part of the reality, part of the story, right? There ultimately, like collectively, there's a lot more pieces, a lot more ideas, a lot more encouragement. Sometimes all you need is just a good word. Somebody saying, I see you, come over here, take a breath with me. Just breathe.
Yeah.
Let's get some food, right? Sometimes that's all you need, but you won't get that if you try to keep everything enclosed, right?
Yeah, it's true. And I've always been a little envious of mommy and me groups, right? These groups of women who somehow come together because they know they're in a collective struggle, and they support each other. So, you're trying to go out to get lunch, and it's like all of these like moms and kids, and they're all, and it's interesting, right? Because the kids are just kind of like hanging out in strollers, and the moms are like really kind of leaning on each other and supporting each other. It's not a support group per se, but it's a way to, hey, let's just all breathe together, right? It is so important that when you're in the midst of this, that you're taking breaks and you're taking care of yourself and each other. And so a couple of things. So you said something, and I think this ties into that, and you said it earlier, ask for help. And when someone offers help, say yes, right? I mean, sometimes we're the last people to ask for help. And then when people say, how can I help you? Let me keep the kids, or let me go sit with your mom, whatever it is, take it. Just say yes to that, even if it's for a few minutes or for a day or whatever. And I know, because I'm a nurse, I've heard people say, well, if I leave and something happens while I'm gone, then what? That ties into the guilt and the guilt cycle, right? Everybody needs a break every now and then. Give yourself some grace in that situation.
Yeah, because a lot of times, a lot of things are going to happen whether you are there or not. And so somehow we put a value on being there when that thing happens. It's not necessarily all on you. And so I think it's that is like such a critically important point. Yeah. I see Charles Sneed Jr. is on, aka Aro. What's up, man? From the 757. He says you have to be confident in the way that you're raising your children. Thank you. You're not going to get it right all the time.
Yeah.
So everybody you're not going to get it right. Sometimes you're going to get it wrong. You're going to say the wrong thing, do the wrong thing, what have you. At some point, just like with you, the kid is gonna have to take all those life experiences and do something with them.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And make some decisions about who they're going to be, what they're going to be. We don't get to own any of that. Right. We already know we're not going to be perfect. So release from that.
Yeah.
And just, plant the seeds to plant. And when you step off in the wrong direction, if you do the wrong thing, hey, how about this? How about apologizing to your kid and say, you know what? your child, you know what I'm saying? You know, I'm using the word kid, but how about being able to say, you know what, I was wrong, I'm sorry, because that's planting the seed too, by the way. But that's another point. We'll talk about it some other time. I digress.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you know, while we're learning, we're also modeling. And a good friend of mine always says, lifting you as I climb, right? We're all we're maturing, as you said. We're getting older, our kids are getting older, and our parents are getting older. We're all moving in the same direction. We're just and we're moving at the same pace, ironically, which means that we'll never be in the same place at the same time, not literally. And so what's the best way to do that? Well, having a group or a jury of your peers, so to speak, some people that you can just say, hey, are you dealing with this too? That's what you were talking about, right? I mean, just having the ability to relate to other people and get a little bit of emotional relief. So I talked about kind of respite and taking care of yourself and taking a break. But then there's that emotional piece to it, right? Sometimes you just need to, you know, say blah, blah, blankety blank blank. Just to get it out. And, you know, we talked about this before. Yes, we do use curse words. We
Listen,
do. I'm not gonna use them here tonight. But y'all know what blah blah blankety blank blank is.
I don't know what you're talking about. I have no idea. So look, but I think it's important. Yeah, you have to have, I think release is really important. When you can say that thing, it seems like we're constantly in a place of trying to kind of present a certain thing in a certain face and be a certain way. Yeah. And so you need a place you can go and just not be any of that, right? Where you can just be like, right, and then come on back and get back on task. Yeah. Earlier, Pat said, you know, taking care of parents long distance can be a challenge, and it absolutely can be. And so I think that's where relationships are really important, right? Whether you have siblings or other people around, it takes a village not only to raise a child, it just takes a village. Period. Yeah. Right, to live a life. And so having people around that can help you when you're not around, and plugging in. You know, one time there was a dude I believe was taking advantage of my mom. She was trying to sell her car. He took the car. It's a long story, but I called up the police. We established a real cool rapport, and next thing you know, that he was staying home with his mama. Those dudes showed up at that dude's mama's house, and the police did anyway, and resolved the issue. And because my resolution was going to be way different. Yeah. And so they actually resolved it rapidly. I didn't have to put myself at risk of, I don't know, incarceration or anything like that. So leverage the people around you and the systems around you and your parents, particularly if they're at a distance.
Yeah, and that's so true for like church families and community and their friends, knowing who their friends are and embracing their friends. And we could talk about this on both sides of it. It is hard when your parents are long distance, but it's also difficult if you have children who are in school and college and they're long distance, right? We know people who said, I don't want my kid to go to school out of state because I'm not going to be able to get to them fast enough should something happen. Yeah. That's real.
It's real. Yeah.
That's real. And so we get it. But knowing their friends, knowing how to contact them, knowing who to contact if you can't contact them, all of those things are parts of the conversation that you should have. And it's not because I don't trust you. And it's not because I don't think that you're capable. And it's not because don't even get into all of that. Just, hey, I care about you. I want to be available to you. And this is how I can support you best. Yeah. I need to extend my reach to your community. So yeah, I love that. Shannon Canning says,
what happened? Go back up to this one before you say that.
Yes. Oh,
no, go ahead. That's the one. Shannon's fine. Go ahead. Sorry. You talking about the what happens? Yeah. Okay, good.
Shannon says, what happens straight up when the kids don't want to listen? They think they know everything. Yeah. Right. Straight up. Here's the thing. There's always going to be a point in time when they believe that they know everything. And the irony in that is that there are some things that they know that we don't. And that transition is kind of hard. So there are things that you know that they don't, but we can't always speak knowledge into our kids. Some things they're going to have to learn. Some things they're going to get from somebody else. But it can't be that all knowledge flows through you. Which is we sometimes get in that place. Yeah. It's like, you don't know what you're talking about.
We've been there, done that.
But the truth is that there's so many resources for them. And we've found and we've been told that sometimes it's better for somebody that's not you to speak life into your children.
We get back to relationships.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Because establishing relationships around the people that you love is another way to serve and protect the people that you love.
Yeah.
And so I love that because I know with us growing up, as our kids were growing up, there are certain people that can speak into their lives in ways that they wouldn't necessarily listen to us, people that we trust, people that had a lot of amazing things to share with our children. And so because God was pouring into those people who were there, so it doesn't, as we raise our children up, we are not the only source of information.
Yeah.
The other thing that's hard to accept is that they actually sometimes do know something that you don't. Maybe they have a better idea. Maybe they have a way that might work. We have a way that we've seen. And so the trick is them finding that boundary and us finding ours. Like that let go place, that place where it's like, okay, I'm gonna let you do that. I like to say that, kids have, as they go into their teens, they accumulate a big old bag of answers. It's big too. They got all kind of answers, just reaching there, and there's a certain point that they hit where they start digging around, and it's like, if you ever dug down to the bottom of the bag of chips and everything, and just these little pieces, it's not a whole lot of answers left in there. And so when they begin to get to that place, perhaps they come back. But oftentimes I think it requires us to watch some things that are profoundly uncomfortable to watch, that you would never, when they were younger, you would never let them do that. But there's a point when you have to let the process play out.
Yeah, well,
potentially.
Let me tell you, both of my kids have blown up on me, and that's not something that at a different point in my life they would have survived. I'm just saying. But at those points when they've had that blow up, where they've challenged, where they've pushed back, where they've said things that I think had they been given a little bit more time to think about it, it would not have come out the way that it came out. In that moment, all I could do was listen, breathe, leave them, and then go tell Mike, because and a couple of times it was like, they might not survive this. I had to remove myself from the situation because I can't believe what just happened. Sometimes we're put in that position. But again, we're kind of talking about both ends of the spectrum, right? So it's not all just about what we're pushing to our kids. It's also about what's being pushed to us and what we're pushing in this direction as well. We become our parents, whether we realize that or not. And it happens slowly and it's insidious, but it happens over time. And in a lot of ways, we become our parents. Even though many of us said we would never become our parents, the same is happening with your children. They are becoming you. And so often the thing that bristles the most is the thing that's most like you. Just saying. So Shelly, I love that you've been sharing and dropping some comments in there. And I saw that you shared that you recently lost your mom. And that can always be a challenging time for many of us, and we don't know the circumstances of that, but we certainly understand how our lives change when we lose parents or grandparents or even children. And we've talked about that in the past. We talked about losing loved ones and that grieving process. But I love that you all, again, are taking care of each other. So what you said was, I didn't mean to send that yet. Coming from that perspective, I would just say, help your parents as much as you can with as much respect and love as you can. And I think that is sage wisdom and great advice. Michelle Moore Wilson, we did talk about blended families. If you go back to the time that we brought in the Dubois, Cheryl and London Dubois, we did kind of a tandem thing. There's a video on that, but we probably need to talk about it again because the dynamics are a little bit different. So thank you. Thank you for bringing that up, and we'll revisit that. And we're glad you're here. We've been missing you.
Seriously.
Yes. So Robert Shepard, thanks for joining us.
Hey, what's up, Pastor? How you doing?
And he says, this is so true. They receive from others. It takes a village. Love that. Thanks for that confirmation. You good?
Yeah, I'm good. Yeah, and Aro said, Charles Sneed, I'm sorry, for the rest of y'all, he said they have far more access to information than we did. Speaking of kids, when we were younger. Yeah. And it's funny that there actually is some good information. I challenge you all to sit down with Morgan Perry in a game of Jeopardy.
Oh no!
I'm like, where'd you learn that? Like Instagram. It's crazy. Or in school.
There's a lot.
But having said all that, and we focus a lot on the children end of the spectrum. I think it's important to think about the parental end of the spectrum. There's certain dynamics that are built over the course of the years. And oftentimes we get in our roles and we want to stay in those. And our parents certainly want to stay in those roles. And so I think it's important to identify when the role is not helping with the situation. Let's say, for example,
wait, say that again.
I think it's important to identify when the role does not help you in a certain situation.
Yeah.
Right. So maybe in the past it was, hey, you know what, Dad, his word that's law. And so whatever he says, we do. And if he says stand up, we stand up. If he says sit down, we sit down. Right. And so what happens then, though, when perhaps he can't drive anymore or shouldn't be driving because it's a safety issue. And he says, get away from my car, I'm driving. Well, do you get into your role then? Or is it time for that role to change? And if it is time for that to change, how do you do that in a way that feels right ultimately? Because it's not going to feel right initially. Some of the things and some of the decisions, the conversations that you have to have perhaps aren't going to feel quite right. But what do you do, right? And so it's important to not disengage and just settle down into what you've always done over the decades, because what you've always done will change. Just like with your kids, maybe you would have started talking first. When something goes to the left, you would start talking and giving advice and saying what to do. And maybe it's time for you to step into a different role, because that's not your role now. Your role is now to let them learn some things by living life, right?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I think that's really good. And Shelly says, last one for the night. Our parents also receive things from others. Have a friend relay your message too. That's so good, because I think, it goes back to what I was saying earlier in terms of feeling like we have the responsibility to cover it all, to do it all, to personally take on whatever it is.
Yeah.
And we're not really vested in leveraging all of the ways that we can be supported and support others.
Yeah.
I think love, honor, and respect goes both ways.
Yeah.
We should strive to love, honor, and treat our parents with love them, honor them, and respect them. And we should also love, honor, and respect our children at any age, right? And so there's this whole idea that we don't need to treat our children as if they were adults until they're adults. And I'm not saying that you should treat them as if they're adults, but I am saying that you should respect them, even if they're 6 years old.
Yeah.
You can dig a little bit deeper in that, and we'll talk about it some more.
Yeah.
But we've been going.
Yeah.
We've been going. We can't wear ourselves out on the first night back in a while. So
let's land the plane.
We thank you guys. If you think something that we shared will benefit someone that you know, make sure you share this. Make sure you like it. You tag them. You bring them on in here. We'll be back next Monday at 7 Eastern. And we hope that you join us on Facebook or YouTube. And every now and then we drop something in on Instagram.
Yeah, see how she did that? That's how you do it, y'all. So I'm gonna pray for y'all and we can get out of here if y'all don't mind.
Yes.
Heavenly Father, we just come to you tonight just thanking you for being God. Thanking you for everyone who's here, everyone who will see this and listen to this. We just ask that you help us, no matter where we are, God, if we're in the middle between growing children and senior parents, or if we're senior parents, or we are those growing children, whatever the case, God, we hope that you will help us to keep you in the middle. Help us all to first seek you in everything that we do, and to not try to go it alone. No matter what it looks like, God, we're never alone. So we just ask that you send everyone here the support that they need, the encouragement that they need. And we'll be sure to give you all the honor, all the glory, and the praise. We thank you and love you. We pray these and all blessings in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Amen. Justice Smith, I see you getting in there just under the wire. Blessings to you.
Hey, what's going on, brother?
Yeah. Thanks, guys.
All right. That's it. Y'all take care. See you next week.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. It's your boy, JC. I'm in the mood. Love. Lately I've been constantly thinking about you, babe. You drive me crazy, yeah. Girl, I want this. Got me all up in my feelings. Oh, the feeling, yeah. I knew the first time I laid eyes on you that you would be here forever. I'm not being arrogant. And I still can't take my eyes off you. 'Cause you made me better, so much better. I'm in the mood to love you for a lifetime. I'm in the mood to love you for a lifetime. Yeah. I love your kindness, I love your confidence. Oh, you're the finest. So glad you're mine, yeah. I don't wanna be with nobody else. Give me your love, that's all the wealth I need. Baby, you're priceless to me, yeah. To love you for a lifetime. I'm in the mood to love you for a lifetime. Yeah. Promise I'ma be around. I'ma always hold you down. Won't you come and hold me now? Won't you come and hold me now? I just got no cool. Yeah, I know I got a roof, but I always keep it down with you. Yeah, and I know they see, girl, you're my queen. And beauty speaks for itself, loud and clear. Yeah. So throw it in the air. It's the sweetest sound to follow my ear. And I want the world to know I love you forever. And that's a long time, babe. And I got time for you, baby. I'm in the mood to love you for a lifetime. I'm in the mood to love you, yeah. For a lifetime, baby. Ooh, yeah. For a lifetime. Oh, for a lifetime. Yeah.